Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host for the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. Oh, yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. I'd like to introduce today Jennifer Moore. She's the author of Amazon bestseller Empathic Mastery, founder and head mistress of the Empathic Mastery Academy and Fairy Godmother Apprenticeship Program, and host of the Empathic Mastery Show podcast. She's a master trainer for EFT International and a mentor and healer for other highly sensitive empathic women. Intuitive from the get-go, Jennifer experienced her first prophetic dream when she was 9, and she's been navigating her extrasensory awareness ever since. Supporting intuitives, lightworkers, and creatives to use their abilities for good is Jen's greatest passion. And we can learn more about that on empathicmastery.com. But welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thank you so much, Lino. I am so excited to be here and have this conversation with you today. I've been really looking forward to it.
So am I. Thank you so much. Hey, so I'm interested. What brought you to this incredible journey? I know that could be a loaded question sometimes.
I would say being born, I agreed, they say we agree to be born, we agree to show up. I agreed to keep coming back. I agreed to show up in this body. And, I came into this life highly sensitive, intuitive, empathic, creative. And I grew up in a family with a bunch of people who were atheists and who didn't believe in any of this woo. And so when I started to experience picking up thoughts, feelings, energy that were coming from the world around me, I was basically told, you're being too sensitive, you're overreacting, you're taking it too personally, suck it up, buttercup, stop worrying about it. And so from a very early age, I started to feel like I was an outsider. I started to feel like there was something wrong with me, that I was broken, that I needed to be fixed, that I needed to be, that I needed to do something different. And interestingly, a lot of that focus, because growing up in a female body, I was weight and body image was such a big part of the value of being female. And so a lot of my stress and the way that things kind of went sideways for me was in sort of trying to control my weight, trying to control my food, trying to, and believing that if I just got thin enough, that somehow all of my other problems would disappear. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing was that it was my struggles with my body image and with with a sugar addiction that actually ultimately led me to learning how to love and accept myself for who I am instead of who I thought I should be. And so, there are so many talking points. There are so many places on the map, but bottom line, I came into this life. Actually, I came in sort of I like to say that I came into this life. I came in through the outdoor. That my mom, when I was born, I had 2 placentas that went off into what created a Y-shaped umbilical cord. So I had 2 placentas, but 1 umbilical cord, where the 2 placentas kind of had one cord coming off of each and then wove together into a single cord that went into my body that connected me to my mom's uterus. I actually believe or suspect that I'm what's called an assimilated twin. Mm-hmm. But I also, when she gave birth to me, because every surface of her uterus was basically had the placenta, when the placenta detached, my mom started to hemorrhage and her body was not stopping. And so my mom started to hemorrhage and she started to bleed out, and my mom was dying on the table right after I was born. And so I really believe that because of that experience, I kind of came in through the outdoor. Like my great grandmother, who my middle name is Elizabeth after her, she was there. And like the ancestors were visiting, like they were right there with my mom. I believe that I did not experience the amnesia that most people experience coming into this next life. And so as a result, I came in with awareness and sensitivity that a lot of other people don't have. But I was born into a family of agnostic, atheist people who kind of thought that all of this airy fairy stuff was bullshit. Excuse my language. Hopefully I can swear here,
Sure.
or you can bleep me out.
Yeah, you can cuss.
That they sort of regarded it that way, and they really were sort of like regarded religion as the opiate of the masses. Like they really thought, it was like spirit, relationship, God just was like this
Jennifer, what kind of
fantasy.
stuff did they tell you? Like, I mean, I guess because you mentioned that you were from at a young age, you were very highly intuitive. I mean, what kind of
Yeah.
stuff did you tell them, and like, how did they respond to it?
So at first I was just really emotionally sensitive, but I was also, so it was like, I think, like I was told from the time I was like probably 3, 4 years old, there's no God. And I was told like that people who think that there's a God, it's their imagination. Like they're just making this stuff up. And so in a way, I was really aware of the fact that I couldn't tell them things. You
Yeah, that
know,
didn't feel safe right from the start,
it
right?
wasn't safe. Like they were just going to shoot it down and they were just going to invalidate it. And so, you know, fast forward a little bit to when I was 9 and I had the first prophetic dream. The thing that was really interesting about that was that, so I was 9 years old. I had the worst day of my 9-year-old life. I was just like beside myself. And
Man.
I remember like I had had this dream the night before that my mom had died. And I was really, really just, I was just bereft.
Sure.
And at the end of that day at dinner, my mom announced that my very first BFF, my very first best friend, that her mother had died of breast cancer that night, like that morning. And what's fascinating to me about this is that I immediately knew that the dream was not about me, that it was about my friend. And I had not seen this girl, like they had moved to another state about 2 years prior to this happening, or maybe even actually probably 3 or 4 years prior to this happening. So the thing was like, I had no connection with her, but I had this vivid dream. And I knew as soon as I heard this, like I was just like 9 years old, but I put the pieces together and I'm like, oh, that's why I had this dream. But this kind of leads us into talking about what it means to be an empath. So I'm going to define this because
Yes.
so from my perspective, an empath is a being, could be an animal, could be a human, but an empath is a being who picks up the thoughts, the feelings, the energies, the sensation from the world around them. And then, but unlike people with paranormal abilities or extrasensory perception, like mediums, intuitives,
Yeah.
psychics, we all are open to receiving information. But where a psychic, a medium, or an intuitive knows that the information that is coming to them is coming from outside of themselves, empaths process information as if it's their own. So, like, for example, with this dream, I dreamed my mom died. I didn't have a vision of my friend at her mother's deathbed crying and seeing her mom die. I dreamed through my own lens. I interpreted it through my own experience. And so and that's one of the things that's very confusing for empaths is that we process information as if it's our own. So, like, for example, somebody with a strong intuitive or psychic ability could go into a house where maybe somebody's been struggling a great deal with a great deal of sorrow or a great deal of sadness. Or maybe they just, somebody like they come into a house where there'd been a big fight. The intuitive or psychic is going to walk into that
Oh
space
yeah,
and is
you
going to
can feel
go,
that thick air.
oh my
You can
God,
cut right through it with scissors.
there is so much sadness in here. There's so much
Yeah, you
anger in
can.
here.
Oh
There is so
yeah.
much whatever in here. The empath walks into that space and immediately goes, oh my God, why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so angry? Why do I feel so scared? Now, the thing is, these qualities or these traits are not mutually exclusive. Many empaths are also psychic and intuitive.
I was
Many
just gonna
empaths
ask
are
you
also
that. I
mediums.
was
Yeah.
just gonna ask you that.
But when an empath is not processing information and not recognizing themselves as an empath, the information will often be coming through in their own filter. And in order to be able to navigate the empathic abilities and the psychic abilities, we need to be able to discern and recognize what's ours, what's not ours.
How do you do that? Oh my gosh.
I wrote a 380-page book about exactly that, because it does take a lot of, so basically, short version of a very long question is
Yeah.
that what I've discovered is that there is I've developed and discovered there's kind of a 5-step system to really being able to claim our empathic mastery and use our gifts to make a difference in the world. So the first step is recognize, but that is not simply just, like at first I was like, oh, it's about recognizing what's mine, what's not mine. But the thing is, first we have to recognize we're empaths. We have to
Yes.
recognize that this is what we are, that we are not like, that we are not quite like all the other reindeer, that, it's like that we are different, that we are outliers, that we have different needs and are unusual in the world. Because Elaine Aron, who wrote a book about highly sensitive people, Elaine Aron, who's a psychologist who coined the term highly sensitive person, she talks about there being probably somewhere between 10 or maybe 20%. Like I think when she first started talking about it, like she was talking that there's like 10% of the human population are highly sensitive people. My theory is that while in my experience so far, all of the empaths I run into are highly sensitive, there is that ability to, or that experience of taking on the thoughts, feelings, energy, and sensations from the world. And especially if you're so sensitive that you're feeling things preemptively, that you're like feeling the war in Ukraine, you're sensing events that are coming before they even happen. That is not necessarily all highly sensitive people.
Okay.
So in my experience, empaths take up an even smaller percentage. I have no statistical basis to say it is this, but my sense of it is that maybe in terms of percentages, if 10% of the population of humanity are highly sensitive people, then maybe 10% or 20% of the highly sensitive person population are bona fide empaths who are absorbing and taking on and processing information, but especially processing information that they don't even have to be in the room. Some people, as sensitives or empaths, are only picking up things when they are in the presence of other people. But I know a lot of empaths who it's like stuff doesn't even have to have happened yet. Like you start feeling the foreboding or the feeling of like, ooh, something like the preemptive grief before it even occurs. And like back when the Pulse shooting happened in the nightclubs back in Florida, 2016 or something now? I can't remember the exact year that it happened, but there were a whole bunch of us that like about 2-3 weeks before it happened, we were all like, why do I feel so weird? Why do I feel so wonky? Why do I feel so strange? Wow, this feels like something is coming. And I remember having a conversation with a couple different people and they're like, yep, feeling it too. So this is one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times when there's an event that's coming, empaths like this super sensitive or extreme empaths will start feeling these things in advance. But then once the event happens, we're all like, it's like almost like the pressure valve just gets released. And we're like, that was what I was feeling. That's what I was sensing. That was what was coming.
And
And
I consider myself an empath. And as you're
yeah,
saying this right now, I'm wondering like what good does it serve our I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but what good does it serve our inner being having these abilities?
So what I have, I actually channeled a book this summer or last summer in July of 2022. And the book was coming, it was my guides and my counsel were talking to me. And this was a really big question of like, why are we like this? Why do we have these abilities? And what they were basically saying is we are every living organism on this planet is a cell in the body of this earth. And we as human beings are cells in the body of this earth. Each of us as an individual is a cell in the body of something much greater. We are part of a larger organism. Those of us who are empaths are awakening to our awareness of our larger, greater body. And what is happening is that we are feeling what is out of balance on the planet. There was a movie that came out way back in I think it was the 80s called Koyaanisqatsi that was like this really beautiful movie about modern civilization. And it was just like, it had Philip Glass's music. And it was just this sort of thing about just like humanity. But the word Koyaanisqatsi is I believe a Native American word for life out of balance. And the thing is that most of us would agree that right now, between all of the all of the divide, all of the disagreement, all of the financial disparity, all of the racial disparity, all of the gender disparity, all of the climate issues, and then all of the political disparity, all of the things that are going on this planet, most of us would be willing to agree that we're and not to mention the triple pandemic, like all the things, not what it's like, we've got like monkeypox, we've got, COVID, we've got RSV now, like we've got all these things that are all going on. Most of us would be willing to agree that on the earth plane, in this dimension of reality, we are out of balance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We as empaths are the ones who can feel that we are out of balance, and we are the ones who are being called first to make a difference, to call it out and to say, this has to change. This is no longer working. And the pain, I think, is as unbearable as it is for so many people, because there are a lot of things. There is a 5,000-year can of patriarchy that we have been kicking down the road and that we have been ignoring and denying and pretending is not a problem. That is it's like all the chickens are coming home to roost. We are at go time. Our survival as a species is dependent on our turning the ship around. Our survival as a species is dependent on our basically taking our head out of our butt, taking our head out of the sand, and no longer engaging in these self-harming behaviors that are harming, and self-harming in the sense of the planet is ourself. Like we are harming ourselves. So that is what I believe is why some of us are like this. Some of us are like, we cannot ignore the alarm system that is going off. We cannot ignore the pain that the planet is feeling, because if we do, we are perilously close to the brink. Now, the thing is,
go ahead.
Go on.
Is that why most empaths are light workers?
I believe that is one of the reasons why most empaths are light workers, is that, and there's a series, I don't know if you ever watched it on Netflix, called Sense8. It's
no, I haven't really heard it.
Oh my God, Lino, you will love it. You will love it. You will love it.
Sense8?
I will say Sense, SENSE8. It was it has 2 seasons, and it was with a like a Christmas special that was created by the Wachowski siblings. And I will just say it is not safe for work. And if you have anybody who's listening to this that is uncomfortable with queerness, this is a really, really sexy, really raunchy, really non-monogamous, like expression of otherness that is absolutely magnificent. But the Sense8s are these beings who like are born, like there's these beings, there's like 8 of these beings, and they are all born at the exact time, at the exact same time, at the exact same moment, and they're all interconnected. And they
Wow.
have the ability to interconnect with each other, and they have these like supernatural abilities. I believe that we are the new, I believe that empaths and the sensitives are like, we are the next, like we are the glimpse of what humans are becoming. That we are like the beginning of the next evolutionary chain, like where you have all these children who are being born that they're calling the indigos that are being born.
Yeah.
Like we are the next stage of evolution in human existence. And part of that is breaking out of the idea of individuality, breaking out of the idea that you are you and I am me, but instead understanding that like I am you, you are me, like we're all part of the greater thing. You're like, but like in the way that like, I don't know, I think about insects where they have like many, 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 many different lenses on their eyes. So they see all these different facets.
Yeah.
Like I'm one of the lenses. You're one of the lenses. We experience the multiplicity of all things. So that's, so that's what I believe. That's what and as I was saying before you and I jumped on, I just want to say really clearly, the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the person who gives them. Take what you like, leave the rest. Your mileage may vary. I'm sharing information with you. I mean, I just hit my 60th birthday. I cannot believe it. I'm
Happy
like, oh my
birthday.
God, thank you. So I've got a few years, a couple decades of experience under my belt, and I've worked with a lot of highly sensitive people, and I've absolutely had my humility and my butt handed to me many, many times from thinking that I knew what was what. But bottom line, this is my perspective. This is my experience. This is my understanding. You can agree with it or not. That's what I offer.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just going back to the whole empath. I was just remembering this time when I was 16 years old, and I was with a group of friends at the mall, and I think we were at this restaurant called Johnny Rockets. I don't even know if it still exists, like hamburger place.
Yes, I totally remember Johnny
Yeah.
Rockets.
So
Yes.
there was this woman sitting behind. It was me with the group, group of teenagers. There was 16 of us. We were all about 16 years old. And there's a woman behind me, and I just felt her energy was so sad. And I just decided this is the first time I ever did anything like this. I decided to go up to her. I left the table of my group of friends, and I sat down while she's eating her burger, and I said, "Hey, I couldn't help but feel you, and I don't know what's going on in your life, but I just want to let you know that something along the lines of like you can tell me." And she looked at me and she put her burger down, her eyes were tearing. She said, "My mother just passed away a few days ago." And I was taken aback because I didn't even know why I was going up to her. And so I thanked her, and coincidentally, I'm transgender. For those listening, the first time lived the first 34 years of my life as a female. And my former name was Carolina, and lo and behold, her name is Caroline. And I'm like, what is going on? And why do we have the same name? And and so I then afterwards I went to a Hallmark store. I don't think Hallmark exists anymore. And I got her a sympathy card. And she was working at Nordstrom. And I went to her and I gave her a sympathy card. I never saw her again, but I'll always remember that. And always wondering, how was it that at 16 years old I just felt that I needed to go up to this woman and tell her that she can tell me whatever is on her mind. And yeah, I guess you hear this story a lot, right, with empaths.
I mean, I think it depends on what they believe or how comfortable they are reaching out to another human being. I mean, I think some empaths are like that. It's so funny. You reminded me of, I had a similar situation where I went up to, there was a woman. I was not 16. I was probably in my 40s, but I was at a Rite Aid, so which was like, now it's Walgreens, but it was like, a drugstore.
Yeah,
And
we have Rite Aid.
and the cashier was like working the desk, and she was just incredibly, like, she was just really, really sad. And it turned out that she had I think it was either had lost her mother or her father and was grieving. And I just remember there's this book called How to Survive the Loss of a Love. It's this little tiny paperback book that's really sweet. That's just sort of like has little pieces of like, just do this, do this, do this. And I ordered like a copy of it from Amazon, and I brought her a copy of the book because, so it's just funny as you're saying this, I'm like, yep, been there, done that, just like feeling that level of bereftness and heartbrokenness that some people have, where it's like, you just can't not do something. I mean, I think some people can't not do something. Some people don't necessarily, I mean, depending on the culture you're raised in, the, like the self-esteem that you've got, like some people are just like, you never talk to strangers. But I certainly think that many, many, many empaths, like we can sense when somebody is feeling out of sorts, when somebody is feeling heartbroken, when somebody is feeling frustrated, when somebody is feeling angry.
And how, I mean, as you're saying this, I still want to talk about the 5-step system that you're talking about, but I'm going off on these tangents as you're saying this. What can empaths do to protect their energy too? Because I know that because I'm such a naturally caring and loving person, and I want to shine my light on people, and I want people to know that I see their light. But sometimes I feel that they take a lot from me.
Yes.
And I end up feeling exhausted. Sometimes a whole day I feel so drained, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to protect? I mean, I do meditations, I'll do a protective bubble over myself, but sometimes it's still heavy and I could feel it. And I wonder, what can empaths do to protect themselves from their soul being shed off their natural energy?
Yeah. Or having energy, like just feeling depleted and like somebody's siphoning energy off of you.
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, I'm just going to very quickly say, so the 5 steps of empathic mastery are recognize.
Okay.
The second step is release. The third step is protect. The fourth step is connect. And the fifth step is act. And the reason why protect is in the middle, not at the very beginning of it, is because if you have already absorbed energy from other people, putting a bubble of light up around you is not going to cut it when you're already carrying around that negativity or that toxicity or that pain. You must release it before you can really effectively protect yourself. And protect is both energetic and also strategic and emotional. So there are a number of pieces to the question of how do we protect ourselves. So first off, one of the things that has been a hard won lesson for me, but that I've really found is, as a highly sensitive empathic person, we will often see the potential in a person and see their light in a way that they cannot see themselves. Yes. The thing is, we cannot have more skin in the game for another person and more of an investment in them than they have for themselves. Mm-hmm. We cannot be ready to do the heavy lifting for them if they're not willing to do the heavy lifting for themselves. This is a hard lesson because what it means is that we cannot be in the position of constantly wanting to rush in to rescue and fix when somebody is careening down a path of self-destruction. Mm-hmm. What I will offer is, in my personal experience, never, ever in my entire life, when I have been going down a trajectory of stupid, has somebody else's intervention or action stopped me from doing dumb things. I have had to learn every single life lesson that I have learned the hard way by coming up against the wall and going, this is no longer serving me. This is no longer working for me. I need to change this. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't been able to ask for help and get support from people, but nobody meddling or trying to control my behavior or try to rush in to rescue me when I'm not ready to be rescued has ever made a difference. And if that's true for me, then it is also true for every other aspect of me as a being on this planet.
Sure.
And so the thing is, we have to detach from whether somebody is ready to change. We have to allow them to learn their own lessons. And, the thing is that as highly sensitive, empathic people, if we have not learned to sit with our own discomfort, then what happens is we feel incredibly uncomfortable in the presence of other people who are uncomfortable. If we cannot navigate our own pain, if we cannot navigate our own grief, if we cannot navigate our own distress, then when we are around other people who are having a hard time, we will want to fix it. Because the thing is, as empaths, not only are we feeling that person's pain and distress, but we're also getting our own stuff triggered and amplified inside of us. And what happens is we feel better when they feel better. So we often will rush into rescue. We will go in and try to fix things. So in terms of not being depleted, a really big part of that is, are we volunteering for jobs that we weren't asked to do? Are we going against consent? Are we just rushing into rescue? And or are we engaging with people who are really happy to suck off of our energy and to take energy from us, but who are not willing to do their own work?
Right.
And to own it and to be like, I like this person, I care about this person, but I'm getting nothing from this relationship. And to have the willingness to be really honest with ourselves about what's really making us tick and why do we feel like we need to keep showing up in a relationship where there's no reciprocity, where there's no where there's no give or take, where it's all take. And something that, the thing is, when we siphon off or when we process other people's emotions for them, and many of us as empaths grew up in family systems where we were the designated emoter, we were the designated feeler, we were the one who was doing the emotional heavy lifting.
Oh, yeah.
So we're really used to that. And what we're really used to is basically processing emotions for people who do not want to process them. Because as empaths, we sense things. And then, especially as little children, it's not safe when emotions are not being acknowledged. It feels really threatening and it feels kind of scary. So what we started learning to do was like tune into what was happening and read between the lines and pick up on what was going on for these other people. But also we often would have contracts with our parents where we'd feel the feelings our parents were unwilling to feel. The problem with that is that when we feel the feelings that other people are unwilling to feel, we basically prevent them from dealing with their own feelings. It's like we block the transmission of their relationship to sort of the universe and their emotional, like the emotions that are designed to be theirs and to come to them.
And in turn, we don't allow them to grow and evolve.
Exactly. And so in my experience, the key to all of this is in our own willingness to learn how to sit with ourselves, to have mercy and compassion and incredibly deep love and let go of judgment towards ourselves when we are struggling, when we are moving through it. And instead of trying to even rush into rescue and fix ourselves, what if we come to ourselves with just profound love and compassion, but also mercy for those times where we are feeling like things just really suck? And you and I are both part of the alternative healing, like metaphysical woo world. And within that world, there's a lot of what I call, light washing. There's a lot of, or some people refer to as spiritual bypassing, where there's a lot of like, if you were in the right dimension, you'd understand that all of this is just some divine message. And like, we're just in this evolution and like, people choose their birth. That one, like choosing our birth is not a substitute for profound compassion when somebody's home has just been blown up. Choosing a birth is not a substitute for like feeling the incredible grief when you are meeting a mother whose son was brutally beaten by cops because he was stopped at a frickin' traffic stop. And the thing is that we absolutely, yes, there's a greater picture, but it does not transcend the human lived embodied experience on this earth that involves pain, that involves suffering, and that involves the impact of loss that happens when you love and when you are fully embodied. And so, like, I think as empaths, but especially as spiritual people, sometimes we try to bypass the grief. Sometimes we try to bypass the sorrow. Sometimes we try to bypass the really messy, ugly, hard stuff. And what I would say is, I really think that in order to really navigate our journey effectively, we must approach our experience, our lived experience as individual humans in bodies with fierce compassion and mercy.
I love that. And that's so true. I just finished reading, you've heard of Medical Medium?
Yes.
I just got his book for my birthday, and I just read last night in the back of where his glossary is, he's got this whole section on compassion. And he learned compassion at a very young age, at 4 years old. And that's when angels first came to him. And it's just incredible that you're bringing this up, because he says, like, without compassion, there's no love, there's no hope, there's nothing. Like, you have to have compassion in order to move forward, in order to really know, I guess, where am I getting at? What was his biggest thing?
You have to have compassion in order to do anything. I mean, light and love without compassion, but also also perspective, like having the understanding that, like, Lino, your experience as somebody who's endured an incredible amount of health issues, like you've been through hell and back.
Oh yeah.
You are also like, I'm imagining I don't know if you identify as a person of color or like.
I'm Latino. Yeah.
Yeah, you're Latino. So you're not coming, like, your experience is different than mine. You're also a transgender person. Your experience is different than mine. It is incredibly important, in my personal opinion, that I acknowledge that you are not me, and that your experience is different than my experience, and that I cannot assume that I understand what you have been through. I can try to have compassion, or I can have compassion for what you've been through. I can be amazed at what you've been through. I can want to learn about what you've been through. I can want to be curious about what you've been through. But I think, like, when we start getting into this whole sort of idea of like all lives matter, instead of recognizing, like, when we are acknowledging that different people have different experiences, to me, compassion is about recognizing that that every single facet of life on this planet is experiencing it in a slightly different way. And your experience is very different than my experience. And yet we also have similarities. To me, compassion is about holding space for the differences with mercy, with kindness, and not trying to, like, I don't know, just brush it under the rug and basically say, well, since we're all of spirit and we're all one and it's all love and everything is great, ultimately, somehow this experience of misery is irrelevant. Like, I think we have to hold space to honor the misery as well as to honor the love. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Sometimes I feel, though, that honoring the misery is a bit too much for me.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, well, I wrote a book about it. I don't even want to talk about it. That's why I'm hardly on other people's podcasts, because I feel so, like, it was hard writing that book. I was in tears the whole time, and it's taken a lot to come out of on the other side. It's like, it's hard for me to even want to talk about it, and sometimes it's hard for me to like have for example, because I'm so multifaceted, where I'm a shorter person, and I'm Latino and transgender, and I know sign language, and I'm hard of hearing. Like, there's all these identities and piles that are on top of me. I've had communities reach out to me and ask me if I would represent them, or if I would represent them, and I'm just like, I can't. And I'm wondering if is that a lack of compassion? I feel like I want to represent all of humanity rather than specify the groups, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. And I think that there's this incredibly fine line. I was having this conversation with somebody actually the other day about, like, when the diagnosis becomes a prison, or the label becomes a prison versus when the label becomes something that frees us. And like,
Yeah.
let's talk about the idea of being an empath and how for some of us, it is something that is empowering because it gives us the ability to recognize the distinctions or the differences in who we are and how we experience the world. And it allows us to change the way we relate to ourselves. Like in the same way that if you had somebody who had a lethal allergy to tomatoes, but they kept trying to pretend they didn't have an allergy to tomatoes, and every single time they ate tomatoes, they ended up in the hospital, it would serve them to just acknowledge that they have a lethal allergy to tomatoes and that they do not want to be eating tomatoes, which cause them to go into anaphylactic shock.
Sure.
Like it's just that simple.
Right.
It's like when we can acknowledge that we are this, that we have these special needs, that we have these special things to take into consideration, and we can accommodate that by respecting it and maybe adjusting accordingly so that we do not put ourselves in harm's way. Mm-hmm. That to me is a really different thing than when somebody like gets into the whole thing of, well, I'm an empath, therefore I can't help it. I'm an empath, therefore I just like, I'm debilitated by all the pain in the world. Therefore I can't go out into the world. Therefore, like I can't go to this concert. I can't do this. Like I can't do that. I mean, I personally don't really like going to concerts very often. I don't love being in crowds. But I'm very sensitive to sound. And so I don't love being in like concerts because of the loud noise. I just don't want to go. It's not because I'm an empath and I can't do it. It's that I don't want to do it. And there's a really big difference even between that of using your diagnosis or using your identity as an excuse to not live your life versus honoring what it means to be in a particular situation, in a particular environment, like to recognize the limitations. There was a period of time when COVID first broke out, and my dad was like around shortly before he died and then after he died, and he unfortunately died from COVID, where I was feeling the COVID surges and I was feeling the terror on the planet, and I was getting awakened often anywhere between about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to about 7 o'clock in the morning. It was just kind of like, it was just hard, it was a dumpster fire. And so I had to be really mindful of the fact that because of the energy, the intensity that was coming in on the planet at that point in time, we were like the volume was dialing up of empathic sensitivity, and a lot more people were awakening to their empathic sensitivity than they had before. Like a ton, because the emotional intensity was going up. People were awakening to that intensity.
Yeah, they sure were.
And so more and more people were finding themselves or discovering that they were empaths, and which meant that there was more amplification of the emotions in general. I had to recalibrate. Like I had to go through this period of there's a Fisher Price commercials for those old little toys called Weebles, and they used to sing Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Yeah. I had to wobble a lot before I was able to find my equilibrium at this higher level of emotional intensity. And so one of the things that I had to do was I had to be really mindful of curating the stuff that I was watching on television. I could not tolerate violence at all. I could not tolerate things that used to be entertaining to me. And now I can actually go back and watch certain things. There was stuff I could not engage with. I had to have days or weeks where I was just like, I'm taking a media break because I cannot be doing this. And so for me, that is about using our abilities or recognizing our abilities and being able to say, this is what I have the energy for. This is what I've got the spoons for. This is what I've got the resources for. And I can do this. And so like what I hear from you is that I'm imagining that there is still some, for lack of a better, there's still some trauma around the grueling process of spending 13 years, 19 years in and out of hospitals. Like there's still pain. Yeah. And the thing is that, I believe, because especially as an EFT practitioner and a master trainer for EFT International, that what's miraculous is that what we think maybe the trauma we're destined to spend the rest of our life like just like trying to like nurse and take care of, what I have discovered and seen and witnessed and had for myself and other people is miracles clearing these places where we are carrying these pockets of energetic distress that are like in our energy body. But the thing is, until we do work to clear it, it's very understandable that you're going to be like, yeah, no, don't want to have that conversation right now. It's just opening up a can of worms that I don't want to go anywhere near. I don't think that's a lack of compassion. I would actually argue that you have enough compassion for yourself, that you recognize what you can tolerate and what will be a trigger for you that is just, you're not ready to go there. And maybe you'll go there in this lifetime. Maybe you won't. You know, it's like, who are we to judge ourselves for what we have the spoons for, what we have the capacity for? You know, like, I look at the way the journeys, like my mom was somebody who made the decision that the buck was going to stop with her in terms of the legacies of like dysfunctional family systems, the legacies of abuse. My mother made a very conscious choice that she was not going to perpetuate the corporal punishments and the, you know, like the ways that she was treated as a child. She made that choice, that was violence was stopping with her. But the thing was, that was what she was able to do. She never was able to necessarily reconcile or address or handle or navigate her chronic anxiety disorder, because it's like she got the buck to stop. Like she all of her energy went into putting the brakes on with this one thing. And then she spent her entire professional career working with, you know, survivors of abuse and helping people to overcome things. But where she could not go beyond was that she could not stop worrying about people. She could not stop perseverating, and she could not stop feeling anxiety. You know, God bless her. She, you know, fortunately or unfortunately for her, dementia has been the thing that has taken that anxiety away finally, where she's getting to live out the last years of her life with grace and without being in a state of perpetual worry, concern, and fear. Wow. But so I guess what I would say is we all have the job that we've got in front of us. We all go as far as we can go. And who am I to judge how far you go? Who am I to judge even how far I go? Like, you know, what do I stop? Like one of the miracles for me, I started this conversation with you at the very beginning saying body image, eating disorder, sugar addiction was sort of the thing, the lens that led me to my journey of healing and my journey of recovery. The absolute miracle for me right now is that I am at a point where I would say 95% of me gives 0 Fs about what my body looks like to somebody else and whether I am thin enough or sexy enough or this or that. Like, I'm kind of like, my body is going to do what my body does, and screw diet culture and screw like being thin enough. Like I'm at a point where when I was younger, if I was stressed out, the very first thing that would have happened was I would be looking at myself in the mirror and I'd be like going into the negative self-talk and be like, you're so fat, you're so this, you're so that. And miraculously, that is no longer a dialogue within me.
That's beautiful.
You know, that, I mean, to me, I'm like, that is a big win.
Absolutely. Jennifer, this has been an incredible interview. I have a question for you. If you can go back to a time where you had like your dark night of the soul, a time when you were struggling and suffering a lot, knowing what you know now, if you could take a time capsule, what would you tell yourself?
I actually believe I did tell myself. I actually have done, you know, I believe there have been a number of times in my life where things have really, really been like, I am hitting bottom and I have I have absolute doubt as to whether or not I'm ever going to sort it out. I'm ever going to figure it out. And then there was like this feeling of like, it's okay. You're going to get through this. Just do the hard thing. And it's, and like one of the places where there was like this absolute glimmer of light was when I was 23. I'd graduated from art school. I didn't have a freaking clue what I was going to do. I really didn't have any idea how I was going to, like, I did not have any adulting skills whatsoever. And I just put out this prayer to the universe of like, please show me the next way. And I was given, and it became very clear that I needed to move home, that I needed to pack all my stuff up. I was living in Ohio and I needed to come back to Boston. I needed to and yet there was this quality of the willingness to just put one foot in front of the next and the trusting that it was all going to be okay. And the voice that, this guidance, this wisdom was like, this may be really, really, really hard right now, but you are doing the things you need to do to take care of yourself. And this too shall pass. You will get to the other side of this. You will find your way through this. It is going to be okay. May not look like what you expected at all. And that's okay too.
That's awesome, Jennifer. So just to do a quick little recap here, basically an empath is a being who picks up thoughts, feelings, sensations around them, and can also be psychic.
Yeah.
And the 5-step system that we talked about in the first step is to recognize that you're an empath. The second is to release. And we talk about release the stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So do we have a minute? Energy? Do we have a minute for me to talk about the steps a little bit more? Yeah, okay. So recognize is the first step of recognize is just recognizing that we are this. Yeah. But within recognize, there's recognizing what is our baseline energy? What do we actually feel? What is going on for ourselves? Who are we? And from that is starting to be able to recognize what's mine, what's not mine, when we are taking on energy that's not ours. And so one of the things that when I notice I'm feeling out of sorts, I love to put my hands over my heart and ask the question, is this mine? I would say 9 times out of 10, 10, the answer that comes back is some of it is yours, some of it is coming from the outside of me. And then within recognize still, I ask the question, what's mine, what's not mine? And then beyond that, even recognizing where is this coming from? What is this about? And the thing is, stuff can be coming from us locally, some, can be coming from within us, within this incarnation. Stuff can be coming from the past. Stuff can be coming from our ancestors. Some stuff can be coming from our previous incarnations. Stuff can be coming from the present moment, but it can be coming from our personal experience. It can come from our family. It can come from our community. It can come from the globe. It can come from an event that's happening elsewhere on the planet. It can come from something outside of this solar system. And then there's the future. There's the things that are coming from, what is going to come to pass. And again, it could be something that is affecting us personally. It could be affecting us in our community. It could be affecting our country or our region. So there's like all of these different layers of what is going on and recognizing and understanding what is this about. Because often once we start identifying where is this coming from, it allows us to stop carrying the things that are not ours, which leads us to release, which is about releasing that which is no longer serving us, releasing the stuff that is not serving us, that is not helping us, releasing the energy that is not ours to carry, the stuff like when we've been siphoning off other people's pain, no longer carrying that. And as a EFT practitioner, I will say tapping, EFT, emotional freedom techniques, is a major part of how I release the stuff that is no longer serving me and help other people to release that. Protect is about both the energetic protection of putting up those, building up the auras, building up the filters and shields, creating a less porous system so that we're not bringing stuff up, and also creating a radiant beacon of light around us so that what we are attracting is light, but also we are radiating light out into the world so that it's less about warding off negativity as it is about just being in the light. But it's also about strategy. It's also about if, my batshit cray family member is texting me, drunk texting me at like 12:30 at night, I do not respond to that. It's like if somebody, like, I live by two things. I live by two sayings. One is nama circus, nama monkeys, like really recognizing like when it is not my responsibility. And then secondly, your poor planning does not constitute my emergency. Like, it is not my job to take on the urgency of somebody just because they're in a difficult situation. It's like, okay, sucks to be you, but like, I'll get back to you in the morning. Like, unless it's an absolute emergency and I am, obligated, like this is my kid or like I'm obliged to this person. It's like, it's not my job to respond to that text message at 12:30 in the morning.
Right.
So there's both there's the energetic psychic boundaries, and then there's also the strategic emotional boundaries. Connect is about the fact that the universe abhors a vacuum. And so, when we connect to a power greater than ourselves and a force of good, there's less space for the negativity to come back. Because if we don't replenish ourselves with positivity, then what happens is, as empaths, we will often absorb the negativity still.
Oh, yeah.
And then act, which is the final step, is about how do we live in a conscious, deliberate, impeccable way that allows us to make choices that are based on our free will and other people's free will and consent and agreement, where we do not go places that we don't belong. And we really are brutally honest with ourselves about when our own ego and agenda is sending us places that we don't belong. So those are the 5 steps of empathic mastery. And as you might imagine, it's not like you just boom, 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 boom. But what's amazing is that over time, it gets easier and easier to work with all of these steps so that you really can kind of like, oh, I'm picking something up. I recognize what's going on. I'm going to release this stuff. I'm going to put my ball of light up around me. I'm going to connect to divine source, and I'm going to act in a way that allows me to be in a place of grace as opposed to in a place of distress.
I love that. I love that.
There you are.
And this is all in your book, correct?
Yes, it is all in the book. And also in the Empathic Mastery Academy. So I've got a really cool system that I'm kind of proud of. I'll give credit to Spirit, because I don't think I would have come up with this on my own. So basically, if you want to learn the whole shoot and match, is empathicmastery.com. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's empathicmasteryshow.com. And if you want to get a copy of that book or my newest book, which is called the Empathic Mastery Diary.
Wow, look at that incredible cover.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, hold on for a second. I'm going to just reach for something. I'll be right back.
Empathicmasters.com. Jennifer at empathicmasters.com.
This is the original book, and which is now 3-time award, as well as being an Amazon bestseller, is a 3-time award-winning book. And this is, so empathicmasterybook.com is where you can find this one, but you can also find the companion book, the Empathic Mastery Diary, which is actually a 52-week journal that leads you through really being able to recognize, release, protect, connect, and act, but especially to get your baselines down, to understand what you're doing, to understand who you are, where you're going, why are you here, what is it all about. So these are my 2 solo books. And then I also have, if you go to empathicmasterybook.com, you also can run into and encounter some of the multi-author books that I'm part of as well. So that's how you can find me. Empathicmastery.com for all of it. Empathic Mastery Show for the podcast. Empathic Mastery Book for the books. And then Empathic Mastery Academy to learn all about the program that I run. And I do a live round every autumn into December, where we go through the steps live in person using Zoom. So it's very cool. We workshop it together. And then during the rest of the year, there's a community of support that exists where people are welcome to participate. We're going to be starting soon doing like a monthly meeting, working with the diary.
That's
and if somebody's interested in EFT, EFTinstruction.com. where I do an annual professional 11-week professional training to teach people how to be really, really good practitioners using tapping EFT as a way to help themselves and other people work through the stuff that is no longer serving them. So that's everything.
That's incredible. Everybody, this has been Jennifer Elizabeth Moore on A Little Less Fear podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button. Thanks so much for all the viewers, watchers, and listeners. This has been an incredible interview, Jennifer. Your light shines incredibly bright. Thanks so much for being on my show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Absolutely, Lino. And I look forward to bringing you on my show. So you guys, I'm going to be bringing Lino on. Yeah.
I look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Me too. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to A Little Less Fear podcast. You know, I keep going because of all of you, all of the viewers, the supporters, the listeners, the followers, the subscribers, the feedback, the comments that I get. I'm just really grateful to be where I'm at and to be able to bring all these people here on this platform to motivate the world. It motivates me to keep going. It motivates me. It lights me up to keep going and going and going. And because of that, my website's also going strong. I've created an incredible resource page for all kinds of people, anybody needing support of any kind. Please check out my website at www.alittlelessfear.com. And I've also launched freelance poetry for businesses, for marketing, for people needing people that need something creative. Check it out. Check it out. It's fun. There's video poetry. It's visual poetry. And if you have any other questions for me, you can also email me at littlelessfear@gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody. I love you all, and just a million thanks.